All right, well, I have 4:30 here, so if Mr. Weedman would like to pop in, there we go. And we will call this to order. And are we streaming and recording? All right, very good. Well, we'll call this public hearing to order. This is to consider a consent decree between the township, developer, and others regarding the properties on Kugler Mill Road adjacent to the Tri-Health building on Galbraith Road. And I'm afraid I don't actually have the zoning case number in front of me if there is one. Skylar, is there a case number attached to this we're considering?
For the BZA case, there is. Hang on one second.
I have the common police court number if you'd like that.
I think it's Sycamore B 19-00113, I think, is the request for a conditional use permit.
Yes. Thank you.
The common pleas case number, let's state that on the record too, please, Mr. Tepe.
Case number A 19-04001.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Solomon. And just for the record, we convened at 4:30 p.m. on March 9th for this public hearing, for which we gave public notice. We've called it to order. First of all, will anyone be testifying today as part of this hearing? I assume some of you will. Let me ask you if you will be testifying, if you could appear on camera and raise your right hand. All right. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or pursuant to an affirmation? I do. Say I do.
I do.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's get going. We have a consent decree before us. Mr. Miller, do we have a staff report to consider as to this first, or a presentation?
Actually, no, sir. At this time, I was actually expecting the attorneys to kind of do an overview of the consent decree. I can walk us through the PUD plan at that point in time, if you'd like.
All right. Well, which of the attorneys would like to go first here with this? Scott, would that be you?
I can go ahead and hop in there and just pretty much say, this hearing is being conducted in regards pursuant to 50507, which is a statute which provides for the ability of the townships to resolve pending court actions via a consent decree. And pursuant to that cited statute, we've properly noticed it. It's taken a great deal of time for all of the attorneys, Mr. Tepe for Five Star Equity Investors, as well as Mr. Hunt, who represents the HOAs and some of the residents who live nearby this parcel of land, to come together with respect to the consent decree, which has pretty much been in its final form, or at least proposed final form, for a number of weeks now. And finalizing the home builder was kind of the cherry on top of the sundae. It's been available to the public for the entirety of those number of weeks, and I believe that the trustees are familiar with it. I'll leave it to kind of Mr. Tepe and Mr. Hunt if they want to go ahead and throw their 2 cents in on this.
Steve, you want to lead?
Certainly, if you're ready.
Sure.
I'll try to be brief. First, good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Pleased
to report that the consent decree and the related documents have been reviewed and approved by the 2 HOAs that I represent. We have over 450 members in these 2 HOAs, and the material was sent out to the residents, and most feedback was very positive. So I'm pleased to report that. As previously indicated, I'm also pleased to report that the owner developer has selected a builder, Red Knot Homes, and we know them, excellent reputation. We're very happy with that selection also. And from the information that we've been provided, we believe that a majority of the homes will be in the 700,000 plus range. So that's great. There's just 3 quick issues I'd like to address. As you know, from looking at the consent decree with the exhibits attached showing the plan for the residences, each of the individual residences will have a separate driveway to Kugler Mill. And one issue that's come up that we would like to have addressed in the consent decree is that each of those residences will have a turnaround. So when someone backs out of their garage, they have a turnaround and they can drive onto Kugler Mill without backing onto the street, because that is a real safety issue. And I've discussed that with Mr. Tepe, and I understand he's discussed with his client, and I believe he'll indicate that they support that change. So we would like to add something to the consent decree that each residence will have a turnaround on their driveway. Second, there were a few issues mentioned that the trustees need to address, and I don't know if Steve Ginn may jump in on this or others. Just lighting issues, landscaping issues, the signage. Nothing that the developer needs to do, but things that we just want to make sure the township stays on top of. And then finally, in talking to Mr. Tepe, he has indicated that his client would like to start some site work on the project once the trustees approve the consent decree and before the court actually approves it. And I've discussed that with my clients, and we support that, allowing them to start as soon as the trustees approve, so we can get these foundations going, get these houses started, with the only requirement that if in the highly unlikely event that the court wouldn't approve the settlement, they'd have to restore the site. But finally, I just would like to thank staff and the township attorney for working with us to address the concerns of the residents, because I believe we have been able to do that. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have to talk about today.
Okay, well, why don't we hear from, unless someone had questions for Mr. Hunt right now, why don't we hear from Mr. Tepe as to his client's perspective on this too?
Thank you, Mr. James, members of the board. We want to thank everybody. I want to thank Skylar and Scott. I want to thank Steve Hunt and his clients. This has been a long and difficult road, but to repeat the adage that the process worked and produced a better plan, I think is very true here. If there's any specific questions on the plan, the consent decree is very specific as to what is being approved: 12 lots, 11 residential lots, a 12th lot, if you will, which will be some of the parking on the rear of those, behind the residential lots. There's very detailed landscaping requirements. There's all sorts of things that are contained in this consent decree that we're very proud to bring. Steve did indicate that, or maybe it was Scott, that the last sort of issue was the builder. And I know Marie Fox, who's my client contact here, is very excited to work with this type of high-end builder. Their product is outstanding. They have great examples throughout the city and the county. I think this is going to be a tremendous asset to the county, to the township. And, as far as the issues that Steve brought up, as driveways with turnaround, quote unquote, that's not an issue. We can scratch that into the consent decree somewhere. What I envision that being is you pull into the garage, and then when you're leaving, you back out and sort of turn your wheel and put your rear against the side of the lot, almost like if you would imagine where a basketball hoop would be located, generally speaking. At least that is where it is in my house. And then they can pull out front, going out front, which I do believe is a safety concern, and we're happy to do that, no issues whatsoever. With respect to the early start, I think one thing has been abundantly clear throughout this many-year process is that people want homes, they want nice homes, and they want homes as soon as possible. And so we've heard that cry from everybody, and frankly, it's not because we're completely altruistic. It's just that hot of a real estate residential market as we have seen in, I don't know, maybe a lifetime or two. So my client would like to move forward with some site work from the time that hopefully this board approves the consent decree today, and when we present it to the court, which I believe is April 15th, if memory serves. That would just be simple site work. That would be, taking out the existing landscaping buffer, putting in the new landscaping buffer, doing some site work for utilities, and getting the lots ready for construction. The theory being that once the court, and we hope that it does, approves the consent decree, that they're dropping foundations lickety-split right after that, and sometime in April. They want to try to hit the spring market. They're very proud of the product, and we just hope that isn't an issue for people. And my client does understand that should there be a problem with the court that it would have to be put back into its existing condition. So unless there's any questions for me, I do want to thank Steve and Scott and everyone else involved in this. It's been a challenge, but I believe that it's produced a better product, and we're proud of it. So if there's any questions for me or for Marie Fox, who's on here, we can answer those.
Marie, did you want to add anything? Thanks for appearing today, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. No, I don't think anything to add. I mean, we just want to thank everybody for their time and efforts. We know it's been a little bit of time for everybody to get this resolved, but we're kind of happy that we're at this point and we're kind of ready to get started, and pleased that everybody is kind of supporting us getting started after this hopefully gets approved and before that it goes to the court.
Very good. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tepe or for Marie here? I suppose you're in position of applicant, although this is a consent decree hearing, strictly speaking. Any questions for them? All right. Thank you very much then. Well, Mr. Mallow, I understand, has messaged he'd like to make a statement. We're going to be having public comment here in just a moment. Pete, did you have a question for them or did you have comments generally? I can't hear you also, but you don't look like you're muted. Still can't hear you.
Before we do comments from the public, do you want me to do an overview of the zoning and PUD changes?
Why don't we do that? And Pete, if you could work on your audio there, then we'll have Skylar give us an overview first and then take the public comments. So, okay. Go ahead, Skylar.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So, in lieu of the conditional use application for the church, what we're looking at here is the creation of 11 single-family lots. I'm going to go ahead and put up. Let's see here. See if you can see this. All right, can everybody see this? So the current zoning in this area for both colored areas is currently zone B, which is a single-family residence district. The yellow area indicated along Kugler Mill, which would be the 11 single-family lots, those would be rezoned through this consent decree to B2. It's the same uses, but there's a slight modification in setbacks and total square footage requirements of the single family lots. But this is the district that brings this configuration into conformance, so that we're not creating non-conforming conforming lots in a single family district. This remainder lot that's been referenced already, lot 12, if you will, this would be rezoned to 00 planned office, which is the same zoning district that we have to the south on the North Creek development. That's the Tri-Health building. One aspect of planned office is that it does require a PUD plan of some sort. So until such a time that the applicant comes back in and presents a development plan for this remnant lot, there's no by right development on it. Of course, with the work that's going to be done with this, with the moving of the berm, there's going to be some some grading and remediation, but no additional parking lot or anything like that until such time that the applicant submits for a PUD plan for modification of the North Creek development. Okay. Let's see here. The berm that is in place now, that is getting moved forward into the rear yards of these the single family lots. The overall height of the berm is actually increasing, even though the berm itself is not as substantial. The reason for that is that there's an elevation change in the average grade. So we should see, from a height standpoint, on average about a 2-foot increase in height. Okay. let's see. So this is, all right, this is the submitted landscape plan for the site. As you can see, it's a pretty heavy covering of shrubs and trees. These are planted directly on the new berm. There's also a 6-foot fence that will be placed at the very top portion, at the peak of the berm. So, and I do believe that from a maintenance standpoint, I believe the development is going to take care of the south side of the fence and the landscaping there, and the new homeowners will have the ability to maintain and modify the north side. Okay. There's also, let me go back to the regular plan. There's also proposed a 5-foot sidewalk, which will connect Kugler Mill Road, and it's going to continue down to connect with East Galbraith. I do have a couple questions, some things that we do need to kind of nail down tonight. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the concerns that were submitted to me by some of the homeowners, or the HOAs rather. And I just wanted to address these. I know we've already started to talk about them. The lighting requirements to ensure, let's see here. So number one, lighting requirements to ensure that there is minimum nuisance. This is referring to the medical office development, and the photometric plan for lighting would have to be submitted as part of the major adjustment for that. We typically, in situations like this, the absolute maximum light spillage that we allow off-site is 0.5 foot candle. That can be reduced at the discretion of zoning commission and ultimately trustees. Number two, crosswalks on Kugler Mill Road, location to be determined, and 2 traffic speed signs. I think we all know at this point, this is a county road. Any type of feature such as this is going to have to be vetted and approved by the county engineer. I honestly, at this point in time, just my knee-jerk reaction, I don't think it's realistic that the county engineer is going to agree to 2 crosswalks. We can certainly ask for it, but I think we'll be lucky to get 1 at the point where I guess that would be the far west side of this development, where we have the large sidewalk connection down to Galbraith. And then, of course, I think there's a turn in Kugler Mill, so we'll have to look at line of sight conditions as well. But we can certainly work on that. Landscaping plan to include taller trees, bushes, and landscape buffer. I can certainly go back to that landscape plan that we looked at. I believe that was one thing I was going to talk about here. The height of those trees are stipulated at 7 to 8 feet. So that would be at time of planting. Obviously, we want to allow for growth of those trees. We need to come to some kind of consensus to get this approved. Is that going to be satisfactory at time of final zoning approval, or do we need to modify that? Let's see, signage plan facing I-71 and Galbraith Road only. That's certainly, that would be something that would be considered in a future major adjustment to the 00 district, if and when there's a plan for a new medical office building. But I think that's I think that's in keeping with what we would require, from a standard planning review. And then reasonable design standards. So there is a great home builder that is that's signed on to this project. I don't think we're going to have any issues there. With that being said, if we need to have some assurances for minimum standards, we can, let me see if you guys can see this. Can you guys see the Word document that I just put up?
No, we still see the other thing you were showing.
All right, I'm going to stop the screen share and then turn it back on. 1 second. I moved something into the screen. There we go. Can we see the Word document?
Yes.
Okay. This is a simple document that could easily be added to the PUD. This is how we can insert this into the consent decree, with minimal fuss. But we have a page in here called PUD Exterior Design Criteria, Minimum Requirements per Lot. So, of course, these are just suggestions. We can, if there's any issues with these, we can talk about them. But we could have all principal buildings shall be 2 stories. This is the residential buildings. Let's keep that in mind. This is for the Villas of Kenwood PUD. Attached garage shall be a minimum 2-car. 1,200 livable square foot minimum on first floor. 2,000 livable square foot minimum combined. So that would be the absolute minimum size of the principal structure. Brick and/or stone wrap all sides on first floor. Use exterior siding materials such as stucco, wood siding, masonry tile, wood shingles, metal panels, and glass panels. Scored plywood and aluminum/vinyl siding are not permitted. I don't even think that's on the building materials list for the home builder that's been selected. So I think we're fine there. Identical facade elevations and color schemes shall not be utilized on adjacent parcels. What that's saying is 2 identical homes cannot be placed side by side. That's simply to avoid the cookie cutter, if you will, aesthetic. And then driveways shall be constructed of concrete and shall incorporate a vehicular turnaround. As Mr. Tepe stipulated, that would be like a T turnaround. The way we envision it, the way it was originally placed on Concept H was kind of a T turnaround to the front of the house. If there's room to do it another way, I think that would be acceptable. That we should probably have some kind of graphic indication on the plan if we can. If not, the development will be held to this tech standard. And then the last question I had is regarding sidewalks. Sidewalks are not indicated on this plan along the frontage on Kugler Mill. I'm not sure if there was a waiver granted by Hamilton County during subdivision review. It's not something that I'm going to necessarily weigh in on, but it's a consideration that I'd like to have nailed down tonight before we approve the terms of the PUD.
Well, and I'll just speak to one of the things Skylar talked about. I know the signage. There's a specific clause in there that says that the proposed office building signage is limited to I-71 and Galbraith Road, and also the sidewalks in clause 7J. It does state that we'll make a good faith effort to go ahead and obtain a sidewalk along the north side of Kugler Mill and a traffic display speed sign along, a sidewalk on the south side of Kugler Mill Road as well. With respect to those other terms, I know it sounds like the turnaround on the driveway is fine. I know that some of those, and this is kind of last minute. I mean, we've taken months and months to negotiate the language in this consent decree, but I know that for a fact, some of those terms would not jive with what has actually been presented by Red Knot and circulated among the HOAs, i.e. the 2-story. There's a ranch setting that I think that's already in there. So I don't know what specific terms that it's kind of last minute, so to speak, to throw those in, quite frankly. But I think some of those can be addressed and have been addressed, I think, at least as far as the turnaround on the driveway and the sidewalk stuff. And keep in mind, I think the residential, this will obviously be the PUD, the consent decree will be the PUD for the residential 11 lots. But with respect to the proposed office building, that's still got to go through the regular process that, is typical for the, zoning process in Sycamore Township. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that.
All right. Well, as to those design standards, as Mr. Solomon noted, this is sort of at the end of the process. This has been a long road negotiating this with a lot of parties involved. We've been trying to bring together the township, the developer, and the neighborhoods, most importantly, residents on Kugler Mill Road and the closest HOAs involved here too. So it's been a process that's taken a lot of time because there have been a lot of people to look at this and to weigh in on the input of it to get it here. And that's been very valuable for everybody to get to this point where we can now guarantee residential character there on Kugler Mill Road. Once again, where there used to be houses, they'll come back and have the office space behind it then as well, complementing it and facing Galbraith Road. But as to those design standards, I noticed that too, actually, in the Red Knot brochure we had seen that there was a single story plan. Aside from that, let me ask if Mr. Tepe or if Ms. Fox want to weigh in on that. Is there any concern about having some design standards there just to ensure that these are the quality homes everybody wants them to be, so that if the developer were to have to back out at some point or sell the lots, that whoever comes in afterward puts in something of comparable character?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. James. I think there's look, we've known what the mission was from day one, that the people wanted a certain like, kind, and quality of home. And we think that we've delivered that. We sent over to Steve, who it's disseminated amongst the homeowner associations, basically the 18 pages of options that are available for the home. As far as design, we're committed, and we have to build those homes just like that. And if we don't, then we have to get the everyone else's approval. And if there's another builder, then there's a whole other process where people have to agree on a new builder. We don't believe that is going to happen in any way, shape, or form. As far as the sizes of the building, I mean, if you can recall, you start with a base model, and then there's add-ons with different packages of full finished basements, or a story and a half finished up top. We don't know what they're going to be. I believe the square footages, Marie, correct me if I'm wrong, are pretty darn close already to what was listed there. And as far as the materials, those are laid out in the 18-page brochure that was circulated amongst the homeowners associations.
Yeah, so I would say that as it relates to the first floors on the homes are bigger than 1,200 square feet. And you're correct, there are options as it relates to what we call the lower level or the basement. So you can have a half or a full basement. And as it relates to the second level, you can have a half or a full second level. To say that the house could be a minimum of 2,000, that may not be true, meaning they could be very close to that square footage, but it might be slightly less than that square footage, because it could be right around 1,700 or 1,800, depending on how they option the house. Or it could be well over, of course, the 2,000, much bigger than that if somebody came in and optioned a full basement, the full first floor, and the full second floor. It could be way over that square footage. So it depends on the homeowner and what they decide to option.
We're not actually writing the Red Knot booklet into the consent decree, though, are we, with the 18 pages or whatever? That, I think that was the reason, saying there should be some minimum standards in there possibly. We're not even specifying them as the builder, are we? I've gotten lost in all the drafts of this, so if we are, I apologize. I missed that.
I think you're correct, Mr. James. But we have known what the charge is from day one, right? And they went out and found a very good quality builder. You heard Mr. Hunt talk about how pleased their group was with this builder. These kind of came out of nowhere. These we have no problem with the driveways. That's not a big deal. All those other things, as far as there is paragraph 8 of the consent decree calls that if there's a sidewalk on the south side of Kugler Mill, then Red Knot or the builder will pay for it. So that's addressed. The lighting issues, we know we have to do a full photometric plan. The signage, we know that we have to do all of that stuff. That's all down the road when it comes to the township's approval of an office building. But we'd like to move forward with what we have strongly negotiated over the last year or so. We're pleased with the product. It's a good product. It's a good builder. You heard that these things are going to be probably selling in the 700s. And let's get going is what my client's probably saying.
All right. Any further comments on where we are right now before we move on to public comments? Do any trustees or staff have any questions for anyone who's spoken so far? And I'll give you another opportunity to do that later as well, of course. But let's move on to public comment then. And Mr. Mallow had been trying to speak up earlier. Pete, are you able to speak now? We can have you go first if so.
Is my audio working now?
Yes, it is. We don't see you though.
All righty. Is that a requirement or I'm not in a great spot with the background? All righty. No, wonderful. I want to first thank the trustees, Mr. LaBarbera, Mr. James, and Mr. Weedman for your efforts throughout this process as well. And this process predates Mr. James initially. So even Mr. Connor, former trustee, for looking out for the residents throughout this entire process here. I also want to thank the developer for listening to the residents and making accommodations, significant accommodations to their initial proposal over 2 years ago to hear out the residents. And of course, Mr. Hunt, who has been working tirelessly on behalf of Sturbridge and Heitmeyer HOAs and a number of the residents here as well. And at the end of the day, we've got my objectives accomplished. And I think these are shared by everybody as the most important objectives, which is having a residential character on Kugler Mill and preventing commercial-oriented curb cuts for churches or office buildings onto Kugler Mill, and putting in place a plan, that will, for, I can't imagine how long, let's just call it the foreseeable future, but I'm hoping forever, preserves that residential feel and character of Kugler Mill. So with all of that accomplished, I hear Mr. Tepe and concur, it's time to move on. I do like the idea of having some sort of minimum standards, but a lot of that objection, if you will, that I raised was long before a home builder was ever formally presented to us. At the time it could have been Joe Pickup Truck Builder, and I just wanted to see assurances that it was going to be a quality home builder who, has a presence in this market of and a reputation in this market of building that quality. Red Knot certainly fits that bill as a luxury home builder, as the consent decree bears out. And I think, as Mr. Tepe pointed out, would be is that if Red Knot Homes is not building with what they have sent out to the residents, or somebody else is not coming in to build something that is not similar to what Red Knot has proposed, we will have to have a conversation about what is a luxury home builder and go through a process that, unfortunately, if it was adversarial, would end up back in front of the judge, which would be what nobody would want, as that would add a whole lot more time to that. So with that, I would say we've got to a place that is a win for everybody, and it is time to put it done, I guess, pick your analogy and move forward with executing the consent decree. Thank you very much for your time and letting me speak.
Thank you, Pete. Who would like to speak next? Mr. Ginn? All right. Steve Ginn.
Hey, good afternoon. I just had a couple, I guess, small questions. Thanks, Skylar, for bringing up those 6 points that we had in there. they were the things from the original point 2 years ago. And the reason we kind of stick on those is because that's how we got the beginning of the intent for a settlement, where those items were the most concerning to people. So we are sensitive to make sure we see those all the way through. And I know that the trustees will do as best job they can. As far as like talking about the height of the residences, even your single story ones, they still have rather elevated roofs on them and stuff. So our main concern is about line of sight obstruction to not look at the building, so even though I'd say you have different models of it, the height of them is helpful. So if they're running 25 or 30 feet at the top edge of the top eave, is that a fair assessment that they'll be somewhere along the lines of that? I guess I'm asking you, Marie. Oh, your audio, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So again, the renderings that were shared so that you could see what one of the homes would look like if it was a ranch style versus one of them if it was a two-story, right? But the homeowner gets to make that choice on the type of house that they would want to live in and want to buy. And each of those homes could be either, meaning it could be either a two-story or it could be a ranch style. And so it's possible that all of the homes on the 11 lots could all be two stories, right? Because the homeowner comes and chooses to be two stories, right?
Well, that would help with our objective, which is, obviously we can't control everything and you got to go with the market and so forth.
Right.
The other part that kind of falls in line with that too was where we have the note in there about taller trees and bushes. And I'm not an expert on that, but trying to get them when that building in the back is going to be 61 feet tall, the office building. So particularly the lots that are closer to that along the west, like 8, 9, 10, 11, those lots, you're going to need some pretty tall trees in there to have a little privacy for the home. I'm thinking of the homeowners that are going to move in there. So my suggestion is to Skylar, when you're considering that, to make sure that you really are picking something that's going to grow fast and tall for everybody's benefit, really. I don't know, probably doesn't even cost that much more. I know there's a limit to how much you can fit in the berm is the easement's not that wide. So, but those were things that we thought about that were in everybody's interest. And as far as the crosswalks go, Skylar, I would hope that we could get to. The plan was with the sidewalk on the south side in front of the new residences, and we are in the process of having a long sidewalk on the north side of Kugler Mill. We are determined to make this a pedestrian-friendly area, and the traffic speed, we'd like to see it reduced 5 miles an hour. But that being said, the having a crosswalk there just to let people and children to get across if you're going to walk down there to Galbraith Road. And the other one we thought, because of bus traffic and pickups, there's a lot of people up at Indian Creek, to put the other one up around there that would just let people go across, because we are going to have that new sidewalk and people are going to be going across the street. There's a lot of people walk up and down there now. So I realize it's an engineering issue. It might not be able to be done, but that's why that's where it comes from people, because we anticipate all of that, of really using this as a part of our neighborhood. So it was important. And that's why I mentioned that we wanted it to be on the record of these items so they just weren't forgotten, because we will persist in pursuing them. And you guys have already accomplished a lot. And with all that said, very happy to see this move along, really looking forward to it. I have every confidence that Red Knot's going to do a great job, and everybody's going to get along, try to keep the mud off the street as best you can. But I'd like to say thanks also to the trustees and administration, Skylar, Ray, and Scott also, Solman, for working on this. The applicant and Tom Tepe worked really well with Steve Hunt. We would have never gotten this done without that. And our Kugler Mill committee with Tom Brockman and Paula Gottdiner, myself, and Pete Mallow, just a pleasure to work with. And Rusty Sicking over in Heitmeyer when we were able to bring everybody together to kind of get on the same page. And again, Steve Hunt, what can I say? There's not enough words to describe the effort that I know that you have put into this. And I just, I feel like the policies of the township administration that have been put into place have created an environment that, takes the time to seriously consider the residents' concerns. It's a very welcome thing to see this. And the live meetings, email updates to keep us up to speed, the communication levels are just much better. So we wish the township continued success, and we're looking forward to this project really being an asset for all of the residents in our neighborhood. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Gann. Who else would like to comment on this? Has anyone else signed up who'd like to do that? Mr. Ashcraft, I think you had signed up to comment possibly if you were interested in that. We could go to you next if you like. Or Mr. Brockman, were you planning to comment?
Yeah, I was planning on commenting, Tom. I'm pretty much, Steve said everything that I was going to say. Just wanted to thank everybody that's been involved in this long project and finally getting it to the finish line, it appears. So that's about all I have to say. Steve covered all the other points that I was going to cover.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ashcraft, I saw you unmuted just as Mr. Brockman started to speak. Did you want to say something? We'll give it a moment here with Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I did send some comments just a few minutes before the meeting started. Kind of sounds like this is a done deal. I did not realize all of this was taking place. And I assume from the meeting tonight that the focus is primarily on the residential structures and not the office building. So I'll just narrow my comments to that. 2 points in regards to those. One is I'm concerned with the 11 driveways, 11 road cuts coming onto Kugler Mill at the crest of the hill there. You've got an awful lot of activity on that street. If you tried to exit that in the morning when the school buses are coming in the afternoon when people are returning home or going out from school and work. We basically have abandoned that exit from the subdivision and go strictly down to Montgomery Road. Crest of the hill makes it very easy to have an accident there because you cannot see people coming, particularly with the curve there in Cougar Mill. So that is a concern to us. Also, a question that hasn't been addressed, are there 11 individual mailboxes? And if so, with each one of these houses? If so, you've got the postman stopping 11 different times along Cougar Mill at the crest of the hill, delivering, picking up mail. That's going to be a terrific backup to traffic. I don't know whether that's been addressed or not, but that ties in also to my third point. Apparently, based on what you all have presented, a parallel access road could not be constructed. Is that correct? Such as the one that's taking place in Montgomery, that development up there. If that can be done with 1 or 2 exits and entrances, as opposed to 11 different driveways coming out on Kugler Mill in that location, that would seem to be a great enhancement to traffic flow and safety. Well, I don't know whether that was considered in the development or not, but it certainly strikes me as a real problem with 11 driveways in what, a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile area. A lot of potential traffic coming and going. I guess that's about it at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ashcraft. Would anyone like to address any of his concerns from the developer side or from the planning side as to that? I know some of these things were considered, and frankly, I am curious about the mailbox question too. I understand the post office has a preference in new developments. They just want a single box to save themselves time. Is that written in the plan some way here?
Mr. James, it's amazing. I thought we covered everything under the sun as it relates to this development. I don't recall we ever discussed mailboxes. Marie, do you have any idea?
I don't recall that mailboxes has come up in any conversation at this point.
Yeah, I apologize. That just didn't seem to be what was wagging the dog, if you will. But we'll look at it. Is that a fair statement, Marie?
I guess I don't know at this point how you handle the mailboxes any differently, given that there are 11 separate lots with 11 driveways. Unless Skylar has an idea of how someone else has maybe handled it differently.
Well, if I may, it's a county road. The homes that actually front on Kugler Mill have mailboxes on Kugler Mill. So,
Right.
When there's a development, yes, the post office would love to consolidate, but for consistency's sake, they're gonna continue the same operation that they that they currently do along this road. I'm making assumptions for the post office at this point, but 11 more mailboxes when there were already 3 here, so 8 new is a drop in the bucket.
Mr. Ashcraft had questions about the possibility of an access road rather than individual driveway cuts too. I'd be curious to know, was that considered? Would that fit? I think those things were looked at, and there was some plan pondering that at one point, possibly, but it was pretty tight. Can anybody comment on that?
I'd say it was extremely tight to the point where it would adversely alter the character of these residential lots, make them less viable. North south were already pretty tight, so. If the applicant or the developer wants to weigh in on this, by all means, please.
Agreed. I don't know how you're going to fit in that sidewalks and a yard and a house.
Yeah.
We did look. I remember we looked at it, Steve, very early on, and it just didn't work. Steve Hunt, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did. It didn't work. I agree.
The turnarounds alleviate the safety issue of someone backing up onto Kugler Mill. Given the site constraints, I think that's the best solution.
All right.
Can I ask one question about a minor question about the elevation is, when you guys start your grading and getting ready, are you going to try to at least match the height of Kugler Mill Road so that you're not, I like to say higher is better in my book. The water runs away from a house. I'm always in favor of that. But when you bring those in, to try to not either get them too high above the road height or stay close so that somebody isn't maybe sliding out onto Kugler Mill if you get too high up. I don't think you're planning on that at all. But would you consider filling them to get them to stay close to flat and level with Kugler Mill's elevation, the road elevation? Like the finished floor would be close to the Kugler Mill height of the street.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're asking about the finished floor level of the house to the level of the street?
Yes. I try to follow along to that pretty much. I realize each one changes a little bit. It's a pretty good drop, more of a drop than I thought. As I drove back and forth and really looked at it, it really falls away in the last few lots heading down towards Montgomery Road.
Yeah, so that elevation is going to be brought up so it's more level when we do the first part of the work that we're talking about now. When the comes forward, that'll all be leveled out, more even to start with. So that'll change a bit in the beginning. But the red knot is the one that will actually determine the final elevation of the finished floor level of the house to them. So I would need to have a discussion with them as it relates to what that level is going to be.
Yeah. I was just thinking of some, because what Pat brings up is kind of true, and the hill starts down there. And the last thing you'd want to have is a very sloped driveway coming out of one of the residences where the guy's trying to stop and it was snowy that day and he goes sliding right out onto Kugler Mill, that would not be great. So I guess the closer you can keep it, the better. But getting it up in the air, there's always been water laying on that property, at ponds, and I know you're going to correct all that. So just that kind of aesthetic kind of thing, it's a little bit of safety too.
I'll weigh in briefly on this. Let me pull up the preliminary plan. These are actually 1 foot contours. If you guys can see this, can you see us over here?
Yeah.
We see the mouse pointer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see these darker lines right here it's the proposed grading. Those are 1 foot contours. So over the course of this almost 800 feet, you're looking at 817 to 808. What was that? 806.
About
So
10 feet.
11 foot change over the entire course of this following. But really the north to south grade, you can see there's going to be a pretty pretty flat terrain here. So and in line with the road. So I did look at the grading plan, like I would with any preliminary PUD plan, and I don't see anything drastic or concerning here, Steve.
Okay. Looks good.
All right. Any further public comments from anyone? We'll take a moment for people to chime in. I know it's difficult to speak up immediately on Zoom. We have a number of people actively on the call who aren't on video. Did anyone else wish to speak? All right, I'm guessing that's a no, but if someone speaks up, we'll certainly let you be heard as long as you do so before we conclude. Is there anything else the applicant wishes to add in response to any other of the comments made or questions here, first of all?
No, sir. I think that it's been a lot of work. We are experiencing a little bit of a different public hearing right now than we did throughout the entire process, which leads me to believe that the plan has overall evolved into something that everybody should be proud of. So we ask that the consent decree be approved by the trustees with the additional condition that there be the concrete driveways with the T or whatever it is, how Skylar described it. And we're ready to start moving dirt as soon as possible.
Do any of the trustees or any of staff have any questions for the developer or the HOAs or anyone? Mr. Weedman?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank everybody for coming together. I know this has been a very long process, and I think that we've arrived at a great conclusion. So I'm looking forward to starting to get the development going, and I think it'll be a great development.
Yeah, Tom, if I can chime in, I want to thank Steve again. I want to thank Steve Hunt for all the work he's done. That's terrific, Mr. Hunt. Thank you very much. Tom Tepe and Scott Solman work with us. Skylar Miller, Ray Warwick, a great job. But this has been a long time coming, and now we're rounding third, as our old friend would say, and we're headed for home. So great job, everybody. Thank you.
And I would join in those comments too. This has been a very long process, as I said earlier, involving a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. And it's great to see how everyone's been able to work together to come to what seems to be a mutually acceptable plan here that the neighborhoods are happy with for the most part. Certainly there are things people may not like, lights from buildings and so on, but the trade-offs are we're getting a solid long-term commercial build out on Kugler Mill Road, which will keep it from becoming Galbraith Road over time. It's going to stay residential, and that's a wonderful thing that I think is being accomplished through all this here. So there's been give and take and compromise in various ways. Had a lot of lawyers involved too here. So it's all come together very well, it seems. So is there anything else anyone wishes to add, or anyone else from the public who did want to speak who didn't have the opportunity? Last chance.
Just technical question for Mr. Tappy. Tom, do you want to have the design firm incorporate the turnarounds on preliminary plan, page 2 of 2? That's sheet number. Is that?
Yeah, Marie, we can have them do that tomorrow, can't we?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're all agreeable where.
I didn't know. We could do it either verbiage or, incorporate it on the plan. I think you're right. Why don't we just put it on the plan?
Yep.
Be just as easy.
All
No
right.
problem.
We're on the same page. Thank you.
Sure.
And we'll get a draft of it to you this, in the next day or two.
Perfect.
All right. And for the public, going once, going twice. Well, thank you to everyone who did appear and speak and others who have appeared who are interested in this process. So with that, we'll call the public hearing to a close. It is 5:26 p.m. Mr. Warwick and Mr. Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have not noticed a special meeting of the Board of Trustees to follow this. So any vote on this will come at the next trustee meeting next week. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ballman, sorry.
I think actually a vote could occur, quite frankly. I mean, I think it's at your discretion. The section that speaks to consent decrees actually does say that it needs the notice of the intent to meet and consider and take action on the decree. So I think it is open for the possibility of actual approval to tonight's meeting. That's my understanding. Steve, Tom, you have any other input on that?
I think that's what your public notice that ran in the Inquirer said under the statute.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a quirk in the whole. This statute is very strange. It actually doesn't really call it a public hearing. It's a public meeting, I think is what the way they talk about it. But I would agree with Scott that you could vote on it today.
Well, let me ask this to all parties involved. I know everybody wants to get this done. Is there any problem in waiting until Tuesday? And I ask that because we've scheduled this meeting for 4:30 today at the convenience of most of the attorneys involved and other people, but that's not convenient for residents who may have wanted to speak who couldn't. Some people may still want to chime in after seeing the video of this, and we'd certainly want to consider what they have to say. So if we can wait until our evening meeting where people can see it, I'd certainly prefer to do that. Now, if there's some pressing emergency, on the other hand, where concrete needs to get poured, that's a different question.
I just know that my client wants to start moving forward and create these subdivision lots ASAP and start moving dirt. That seems to be really important, that people want to see that this is happening. That's evidenced by the fact that there's a pre-build requirement before the office building. We think that we can meet that pretty darn quickly. When the office building is going to come online, we don't know. But I can appreciate your position, Mr. James. I do. But I also think that you could vote here. It was properly noticed and the statute would permit as such.
Could I mention it? Sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead.
If it would help you to have, if you did take it to the next meeting, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying one way or the other, but at some point, I believe, aren't the HOAs signing off on the consent decree? Or isn't there a spot for, or is that just on the meeting? Steve,
That's correct. That's correct.
We're signing off, right?
That's correct.
So if you guys made those corrections, that one correction, the consent decree, and circulated around, we could probably get them executed. So when you show up in the meeting to vote, you'd have already the HOA signatures signing off on it. If that helps, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, Tom, I know we did kind of hurry the notification up a little bit, but I think we got back what we expected in returns and stuff from all the emails. But it's up to you. Maybe it would help. It'd make it easier so that Tom Tepe, you know that we're getting signed off, so you're not going to get a rebuff from the HOA boards. And if any of that would help, I'm just throwing that out as a thought to you. Whatever you guys want to do.
Understood. That that would be helpful, but time is not necessarily the friend of all, and we've put an awful lot of work in this thing, and I'd love to see this thing move on to the next phase. But it's the discretion of the board, and we'll respect the decision.
Well, understood. My suggestion to the board, to my colleagues here on the board, is that we wait until Tuesday for this and that we make it perhaps our first item on the agenda or very early on the agenda to take care of the vote. That would not be a continuation of the public hearing. The hearing is closed here. But if the public makes comments in the meantime, it's certainly something the trustees would take into account.
And
Is there a strong objection to that?
I believe we should take it up tonight. I think it's fair to do. I think we've resolved all the issues. I think notification's gone out, and I believe that there's been notification to all of the members of the HOA, in both of them, I assume. Communication just by the one piece of information that Skylar put up on the thing tonight with the concerns, the 6 concerns. So I believe everyone's been communicated with. I see no reason why we need to wait another week. I think if the applicant wants to move forward, I think that we should, we've been doing this now for a year. I think we should accommodate the applicant and continue to allow them to move forward.
I don't think another 6 days is going to make a difference. I'm going to go along with Mr. James, and let's do this in Tuesday's meeting.
Any strong objection to that from anyone concerned? You've stated your piece, as I understand, but.
No.
All right, I'd suggest we wait until then. That will give the HOAs an opportunity to go ahead and sign off on these things too. And we'll have it packaged and ready to go at that point.
Yeah, Mr. Kepi and Mr. Solomon, Maria, you know where we stand. You know the direction we're going.
Understood. And Steve, again, we will take you up on that offer on maybe getting it to Steve and see if we can get a wet signature on that, just for peace of mind, if you will.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good thing. I talked with Rusty from Heitmeyer, and he's not on this meeting, but we already kind of anticipated, how we were doing it. We green-lighted this together on Saturday when we had waited for responses and so forth. So we had already kind of addressed this, and I've talked to Steve about it, about getting a signature put to it. So we're ready. We're ready on our end. I just want, as long as we got through today.
Hey, Steve, I got a question. I'm going out of town on Thursday. Won't be back until the following Tuesday. So if my signature is required, I'm going to need to do this tomorrow because I fly out at 7 a.m. on Thursday.
Well, Steve, we can get a signature block done, and then you can present it, Steve Hunt.
Or can Steve sign on my behalf? As far as I'm concerned, I don't really care.
I think this consent decree indicates Steve Hunt on behalf of the HOAs.
Yeah, so Steve can sign on behalf of both.
Right.
Okay, right. I just wanted to make sure if I wasn't available that it wasn't going to hold things up.
Thanks,
we'll
Tom.
We'll have him fly somebody to you, Tom, and sign off. Okay.
I'll be on the beach.
All right. I'll bring it to you then. All right. Any further business then for this public hearing? Last chance for public comment. Anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
I'll second. Go ahead.
All right. This hearing is brought to a close at 5:33 p.m. on March 9th. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and for getting things to this point so we could have this hearing. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Stay safe.
Thanks again.